Welcome to the Clean Library Podcast, where content meets conscience. We believe there are millions of you readers out there desperately searching for a better way to find clean content. Each episode, we will introduce you to a new author of clean books, giving you, your family, and your friends clean options.
Hi, my name is Marcus Williams, and I'm here with co-host Brock Morris, and today we have another great episode with special guest Susan Phelan. In junior high, Susan announced she was going to be an actress. She eventually became a professional actress, but first she rode horses, raised 5 children, guide dog puppies, a zoo of assorted animals, and worked, if you could use that term, in a library. Somewhere in the midst of that, she took up writing, because life is made up of stories. When she's not acting in stories or telling stories, Susan likes to play with her family and make messes in the kitchen or any other flat surface. Her middle grade book, Misclassified, came out in 2022, published by Chicken Scratch Books. Welcome. Thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Oh, thank you guys for having me. It's nice to meet you.
Absolutely. So we're going to do our 2 truths and a lie, and I need to remember everyone. See, we have Steve here who keeps score for us. So the last couple of episodes, actually, we've both either won or lost, so we haven't changed the score for a while. So we're still stuck at Brock 8 and me 5. So Steve is getting a little bored. He'd like to see some action. We'll see if we can make that happen today. So,
absolutely.
First, I'll read those out. So while we're talking, maybe we can figure them out. We might throw in a few questions here and there to see if we can trip you up a little bit. Number 1. I talked to Bob Hope on the phone. Number 2, I was at Cape Kennedy to watch Apollo 11. And number 3, I had a sheik kick me off an elevator. So, talked to Bob Hope on the phone, at Cape Kennedy to watch Apollo 11, and had a sheik kick me off of an elevator. Those are some interesting ones. We're going to have to see if we can figure those out. That's fun.
You have
to make good stories behind each of those.
Make it harder.
So, as a professional actress, do you have, is there movies or TV shows that we should know about? Are you theater or TV movies?
I'm mostly TV. People will end up saying, I just saw you today, and on commercials or wherever. But the one I think I've gotten comments mostly on 2 of them. One was a Lifetime Christmas movie, called Hot Chocolate Holiday. I think that came out in 2022. And the other is ages old, but it's still making the rounds and people are loving it, called You're So Cupid.
Ah, okay.
It's a teen romance, and the dad is Cupid, and you got twins that are fighting over a boy.
The actual Cupid.
He's the actual Cupid, married a mortal, and and his tweened daughters are fighting over a boy.
That's fun. Well, I can say that during the month of December, I watch a lot of Christmas movies, but I don't know if I've seen that one. I'll have to check it out. It's possible I have, because I've seen so many of them, but we'll have to see.
I love it. My whole, TiVo is just filled with Christmas movies, and it's usually about February before I finish them all.
Before you finish? See, I'm a strict December only, so I tell my wife we can watch them. We can watch them all month long. I'll watch any of the ones you want, but as soon as Christmas is over, I'm done.
A purist.
Yeah, I am, and I don't even listen to Christmas music until after Thanksgiving dinner, and then that's all I listen to. But
yeah.
So 6-year-old was watching Shrek the Halls just the other day. So,
and how do you argue with a 6-year-old when she wants to watch that?
Can't fight with a 6-year-old.
That's right. So, are you still acting, or are you transitioning fully to writing, or just loving life and doing everything?
I am still acting. In fact, I have 2 auditions I need to get in. The audition process has changed because of COVID, and almost all the auditions, the first round, are videotaped by the actor or actress and then sent in. And and I just got a message about 2 that I need to audition for and get sent in. In fact, I sent one in. I auditioned for something, and I planned on editing the beginning and the end because I messed up at the beginning. You're supposed to slate, which means, like, say your name and the part you're auditioning for, your agency, whatever they want in the slate. And then you pause and then you start your audition. Well, I forgot to slate and just started the lines and then went, oops, stuck my tongue out at the camera and then started over with the slate. And I was going to cut that off. I spent hours trying to cut the thing off, and I could cut it off, but then I couldn't save it. I am not a big tech person, so it was just frustrating me. And finally I said, fine, I'm sending it in the way it is. I get it or I don't.
Right.
I got the part.
Awesome. Congratulations. I'm involved in community theater a lot. And this summer we decided no video auditions because we've been allowing them since COVID. And I was just like, there's just a disadvantage when you have live versus video. And I realized this summer as we were doing auditions that's the stuff I missed, was the stuff that wasn't edited. It wasn't perfect. It was someone who stood up and was real and maybe made a mistake and had to go back and fix it. And like, that makes a huge difference. It just humanizes your audition.
And you've got the energy.
Yeah.
The energy in the room is different.
Yeah, totally.
I do community theater, but I haven't done it for quite a while because it's just, it takes over your life for 3 months.
It takes over my life all year because I'm the program manager. But I love it. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great community service. That's the way I look at it. But anyway, we're talking movies and TV here, and we're here to talk about books. But I think art is art. I think this is great.
It is. And you know what? As an actress and a writer, I find it's like cross-training. They support each other. In reading and writing, you're learning about characters and empathy and all this stuff. And then when you read a script, you understand it better because you've done so much reading before, and you can do cold reads if you've done a lot of reading out loud. And they really work together. But yes, I have a book out.
All right, tell us about Misclassified.
Do you want to see it?
Sure.
Here it is. Misclassified. I love the cover. She did not know me, so I don't know how she decided on the short curly red hair, but it's kind of cool. Tell you about it. This is about a girl named Bly, and she has been the smart one. She's gone through all the way through sixth grade, just, acing everything. And her dad calls her his little professor. And, she's a math whiz, just really, really smart girl. Well, she gets to junior high, 7th grade, and all of a sudden, everything falls apart. And she's failing all her classes and losing her books and losing her homework. And she's even failing sewing in gym. She forgets to bring in her sewing supplies, so everybody's way ahead of her. And, and then she has to rush to catch up. So she's really struggling. And she wants to join the photography club because that's her new love. But her father, he was a mathlete and she's going to be a mathlete. So they have that struggle right there. And because she thinks she's loved because of her smartness in her mind, she's afraid to tell anybody that she's struggling.
Yeah.
So she's making all sorts of poor decisions that are leading her down the path where she says, "Oh, just until I can get my grades up," and so it goes until we have our happy ending. Of course, we'll have a happy ending.
And well, I mean, I could immediately relate, which is, I mean, how many years ago was I in junior high? For me, it was between 4th and 5th grade because we moved from Utah to California, and I started 5th grade, and school had always been easy, and I failed my first test, and I didn't know what to do with myself. I was beside myself. Like I didn't even know this was a possibility, and it was a lesson. Like it was a whole thing. I had to learn that failure's okay, and you can get back up and start again. So that's funny that even a middle grade book written today like resonates with me from experiences from my childhood. And
when you're smart, you don't learn early on how to study.
True.
Because you just boom, 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 you're getting everything right away, and you don't have any concept that sometimes things are a little bit harder. And failure becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
So where did the story come from? I know you mentioned we read it in your bio that you were doing all of these things, and boom, you decided somewhere in the midst of it all to become a writer. Was the story just something that came to you? Was it from personal experience or related?
It came to me. One of my kids had this struggle in junior high, she, trying not to say which kid it was, all of a sudden was failing everything, and come to find out she had undiagnosed ADHD. There's the kind when kids are young and they're hyperactive and you pick up on it really fast. And then there's the kind that's inattentive. And if you're really smart, you have all sorts of coping skills until you don't.
Right. Yeah.
I love that. And the other beautiful thing about, Marcus, what you said earlier about it resonating with you just from that experience is what you just shared, Susan. We've talked briefly about this before, about starting to write about those hard things that we go through in life that are a little bit vulnerable, but allow people who are struggling with those things to feel like they're seen a little bit more through a story like this, right? So they can relate to it also on the challenge of struggling with ADHD or whatever the case might be, right? And I love stories that have that sort of worked through the storyline, because it really does help it resonate on many levels.
There's another character in there with neurodiversity as well. So it does, help people. And, I've had readers who have said, she gets me. This is me. I've had one reader who said, I wanted to slap her until I figured out what was going on at the end, because she had no idea this was not her life at all.
Right.
And then psychologists say, all right, this book needs to be out there for people to read so they can understand what this is really like. So it's really had some interesting reviews that way.
That's great. So it also builds empathy for those who might not relate to it at all, right? So that's across the board. Fantastic.
Yeah, and that, there are a couple of series of books of the struggles of junior high or struggles of middle school that have become very popular, and I think that they're popular for a reason, because it is such a difficult transition and experience for everyone.
Yeah, you're hitting this, the world changes at that time. Your brain is changing, your body is changing, your school environment is changing. It just strikes you on so many levels. It can be a really rough transition time.
Yeah. And sometimes when I read those middle grade, that kind of subgenre of middle grade books, I don't like it when they try to appeal to the reader by having, for lack of a better term, all the kids have potty mouths. Like they're constantly, and like, but okay, so maybe you're trying to relate or use words but you're skimming the surface of something that could be so much deeper, and you're not giving these kids the benefit of how smart they actually are.
Yes, that is very true. And, that's something about Chicken Scratch books. They publish only clean middle grade. You're not going to have a potty mouth in there. You're not going to have inappropriate discussions that depending on where you are with inappropriate. But they want clean, traditional middle grade that a parent who cares about that kind of thing doesn't have to read the book first.
Yeah.
They can trust the books from Chicken Scratch.
Yeah, and some of those books, as a parent, when I had kids that age, I did have to read first, and it was kind of surprising that it was a great moral to this story, but why do they have to talk that way? And
there's subjects that are important, but maybe not quite at that age.
Right.
When they're already going through so much, we don't need to add, those extra layers.
Yeah. I had an experience, just speaking of that age group and theater, will bring us back. A friend and I, we lived in an area where there was no theater or drama in the middle school. And they just didn't have the class. They only had a couple of electives. And so we started a program, and we essentially went to the principal and said, we don't need anything from you except for the space and the time to do it, and we'll take care of everything else. And he approved it, and it was great. But we had an experience where we had very high expectations, and these are 6th graders and 7th graders. And we were expecting them kids who'd never done any kind of drama before, to put on a really good show. And we had a dad come up to us in the middle of the run. We'd had an issue with his daughter wasn't taking it seriously, not showing up. And so we were saying, look, these kids are depending on you. You've got a cast. And so she got upset, and her dad came in, and her dad said, but this is just a dumb middle school production. Who cares about this? And so the 60 kids in the show care about it. The fact we've spent hours and hours care about it. And then he watched the show, saw what those kids did, and he actually came up to us afterwards and apologized. And he said, I didn't realize this was a real show. I'm sorry. And it wasn't me. It was those kids. He did not realize that they could do what they did. No one thought they could do it until someone had the expectation and told him, you can do it, and I'm going to help you do it. That's
fantastic.
So
I love that.
That's a story that will always stick with me, because it made it worth it, all of that work. But it was just a reminder too, to me, with my kids and other kids I've worked with, that they can do a lot of things. If
I ever write another story with this character, because she's such a fun character.
Yeah.
One of the ones I want to write is a play, doing a school play. I want to do another one with her raising a guide dog puppy. Because as you read before, we raised guide dog puppies, and there's some real good growth that can happen from that. So
those are great storylines. I think that would be fun. Great challenges too, that your character can work through. So that's cool. So with going with Chicken Scratch books, how did you end up finding them and connecting them and getting your book published by them?
I had sent it out to a number of places. I knew it had what's called voice. It had been called very voicey. Voice is where you can tell who each character is because of how they sound, the word choice and that kind of a thing. And you can tell personalities, and they're not all like cookie cutter characters. And I knew my plot was finally right. And then all of a sudden I realized, you know what? I think I've started in the wrong place. I started with her getting on a bus and realizing she had a problem. But the thing is, nobody cared that she had a problem with her math homework, because so what? Who is this person?
Right.
And I don't usually dream stories, but I dreamt the first chapter and put that in, and that gave her, it made everybody care, because now we knew who she was. We knew a little bit about her family life. We knew a touch about what her problem might be, and we cared about her because she cared. We showed her, caring about her siblings, caring about what she was doing right then, and it made all the difference. Well, then after that, somewhere on Facebook, on one of my writer sites, somebody mentioned my cousin or my sister's nephew, or somebody like that,
Right.
has started this this new imprint, new book publishing house doing middle grade, and they want clean middle grade. And I thought, I went to the site, Chicken Scratch Books, and they were about a year or so old at that point. And I said, wait a second, this is a fit for these guys. So I sent off a query letter to them, and I don't remember whether it was part of the book or the whole book that I sent to them, and finally got my yes.
Awesome. So did you go send queries to a bunch of other publishers before you found them?
Yeah, I sent queries. Well, yes, but a lot of them were agents, because the big publishing houses use the agents to filter things down so they don't have quite so many to look at.
Yeah.
So a few editors got them, but mostly agents, and they weren't even, I wasn't even getting a second look, like well, this could be good, send me more chapters. And I realized it was because you didn't care about the character when her problem started. So
interesting. The importance of that one chapter that changes the whole book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of times I think you get advice that you're supposed to start with the action.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, for example, that maybe wasn't the right way to go. Like, every story needs to start at the right place, and it's not always the same place.
There's an author, J. Scott Savage,
mm-hmm.
and he writes a lot of middle grade, and he calls it the Buffy beginning, from the Buffy the Vampire show.
Mm-hmm.
That, it starts with the problem at the beginning, but the problem isn't the problem. And so you've got this little bit to kind of get you into the characters before it starts into the problem. And so that's what mine needed. Gotcha.
So this was the first time you dreamed the story. How does a story normally come to you?
There are people that are called pantsers, mm-hmm. and people that are called outliners. And an outliner just, there's some writers who have entire character books, and they know what their character would eat for breakfast, and they write all the outline out before they start writing. And I'm more of a pantser, mm-hmm. although my new novel I have to outline, and so it's really slowing me down. But I will just start with a character. This one I had a character and a general situation. I knew it was going to be about a girl getting to junior high. It was really smart, and all of a sudden she was failing all her classes. Mm-hmm. And I knew that the issue was the ADHD.
Yeah.
And then just, went from there. And then I had to keep getting her in trouble. I don't like to be my characters. I want to, they say, put them in a tree and throw rocks at them so they climb higher and higher, and it gets scarier and scarier. Well, I want to be nice. So I would put her in a tree, give her this problem, throw one rock at her, and then help her down again, get her out of the problem. And then I'd put her in a problem and get her out of the problem. And finally, my daughter read it and said, I'm not worried for her, Mom. And that was when the light bulb went on, and I realized I had to, keep upping that trouble and make it so people would worry about her.
Yeah.
They would care.
That's funny. My middle grade series is called The Grounded Detective because the main character is constantly getting grounded. And in the first book, that was easy. In the second book, I had to start thinking up new ways of hitting his brother or not doing his homework. I had to keep thinking of things. Dang, how does this kid keep getting grounded? I'm running out of ideas.
Let's see. Who do we know? Oh, my husband would probably have plenty of ways to tell you.
From personal experience?
From personal experience. Actually, most of it he didn't get in trouble for, but he should have.
He should have. He was smart enough not to get caught then.
Yeah.
So you're working on a new novel. Is this another middle grader? Tell us about it.
Yeah. Well, I have a young adult one that is out to agents now, and it is a romantic suspense.
Okay.
But the one that I am outlining right now and getting ready to write is a middle grade historical novel.
Oh, fun.
And it takes place in Gettysburg right after the battle. There's a girl whose family left their home to get away from the battle. And when they come back, it is a hospital for the wounded soldiers. And she and her brother, she becomes a nurse. And one of the jobs, she's 13 years old, becomes a nurse for these people. Now, a nurse back then, was not giving shots. Or she was more, getting them water, doing the laundry,
right,
help writing letters for them, all those kinds of things. But her brother, who was 10, was responsible for taking the severed limbs out of the operating room and throwing them in the pile. So these two kids, they were, they need to be written about. That was pretty cool. You wouldn't even think of giving a 10-year-old or a 13-year-old those kind of responsibilities nowadays. And
right.
I think it's important for kids to know about people like this.
Yeah, absolutely. To know what kids in the past had to do, what ancestors had to do, and and it's not to say, oh, look what they did. It's more of I think it's an inspiration. Like when I look back at my ancestors and what they did, it's a inspiration that if they could do that, then this is easy. I can do this. And
exactly. If they can do it, I can do it.
And, they went through that and now I believe they're watching over me and helping me. And like, you can't get better help than someone who went through, her husband dying on the wagon trail and raising her kids and, So that's super important, and it's cool to write it in a way that will be interesting to kids, so that they don't feel like, oh, a history lesson. Oh no,
yes.
Another lecture about the past I don't care about.
I have to make it interesting. I have to make up a plot because these two people, this family was a real family.
Yeah,
and but we don't have enough about them to have a plot. So I get to make that up, but I have to have all the facts around it be real.
Right.
And then make sure the facts, the way they're stuck in, it doesn't sound like a history lesson.
Yeah, that'll be a fun challenge, and it should be a great story. That's a great premise for a story, and I think it's inspirational, really. Like a 10-year-old imagining that, that's really cool. So do your characters, since you're a pantser, do your characters speak to you when you're writing?
I don't hear them in my head, but I hear them like as I'm typing. I guess it's sort of just mute. What would you say? Just kind of coming from my head into my fingers without me like actually hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes they want to take me directions that I'm not sure I should go and, figure that out. Sometimes I'll let them go for a while and other times I'll rein them in.
Yeah, I find if I try to fight them, they just keep coming back harder and harder until I give in.
Mhm.
Now it sounds like too that you started out with this middle grade that may have been relatively easy from writing a clean, writing clean standpoint, but this story you just mentioned is sort of transitioning to something that might be a little bit more intense and
Yes.
certainly during a time. How are you approaching that? How do you manage this transition into writing material that might be starting to get closer to that, realm, and how do you write that?
No, I will. I know I'll be careful with it because I don't want to traumatize any 10-year-olds. And I don't know how yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I've written all the way down to picture book level and handled some difficult subjects. None of them are published at this point, but they're sitting on my computer somewhere. But I've handled some challenging subjects in a way that is pretty gentle. I tend to write gentle humor, so there will definitely be humor in there that'll balance out some of the tragedy. And yeah, and but specifics, I don't know how I'm going to make it so that we realize he's carrying out these horrible arms and legs with bullets in them to where, we're not traumatized by it. That's going to be a work in progress.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing we talk a lot about on this program is that obviously clean is a subjective term to a certain extent. Yes. And sometimes, just depending on what you feel like the character needs or the story needs, sometimes you have to vary in that, right? It can be a gray area, and how you manage that is personally up to the author. And it doesn't mean that one direction is the right way versus another direction the wrong way, or including some more intense material that helps create connection while trying to keep it in a certain age group. These are all the challenges that I think think authors struggle with in writing clean material. And so that's something that sounds like you're just getting into the beginnings of, right? But
I am. But you are very right. And there are kids that age who can handle that kind of thing. But the way I write, I suspect it could still be published by Chicken Scratch Books as far as traditional and clean. Just because, if I don't want to be mean to my characters, you think I'm going to, talking about bloody stumps or, no, it's going to be done delicately, like the witch and delicately.
Now, is your goal to stick with Chicken Scratch Books, or have you considered maybe, publishing, not going traditional in the future and self-publishing?
I will definitely have whoever it fits, have them publish it. If they'll have me.
Yes.
But I also know that if it's a fit for Chicken Scratch, that might be the first place I send it, just because I know them. We had a good experience.
Right.
There's a relationship there. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, good relationship. The editor was, the vision letter she gave me was really good. I could see it, it just all fit together. So as long as it seems like it's a fit for Chicken Scratch, that'll probably be the first place I take it.
Awesome. So with your theatrical background, are you narrating the audiobooks?
I have, for Misclassified, I do have audio rights, and I do want to narrate it. But as I mentioned before with the tech stuff, I'm a little slow with tech. Mm-hmm. So doing it at home has got me a little anxious, a little bit of steam sort of coming out the ears.
Yeah.
So it keeps moving down the list of to-dos.
Maybe find a studio where they can do the mixing and stuff for you while you do the performance.
Find one that's affordable, because it's not a big publisher, and so it doesn't get the press the big publishers get, and so it doesn't get the sales the big publishers
Sure.
get. So I'm very far from a J.K. Rowling.
Aren't we all?
And I don't want to go into debt too much with something that won't come back to me.
Right. And that's another issue that we've talked about before, and I think needs to be constantly thought about, because there's got to be a solution out there that readers want audiobooks. Like, there's no, every single statistic shows that audiobooks are the place to be, but especially for authors from small publishing houses or independently published authors, the cost of producing it, are you ever going to see the return on that? And so how do you, there's got to be a better way. That
I don't even mind breaking even or, going in the hole a little bit. I just don't, want to put thousands of dollars into it when I'm going to get $100 return.
Right. And as an actor, you can appreciate that they deserve to be paid. Like, voice actors deserve to be paid a great wage, because it's a difficult thing. But
yes,
how do we fix that? Like, how do we make that happen? A lot of people have said AI. I don't personally don't think that's the answer. A lot of people are trying it, but I don't know.
Most of the AI I have heard is so voiceless, so flat.
Yeah. I did a program where you just upload a little bit of your voice, and it was like 30 seconds, and then a chapter of my book, and it was creepy in that it sounded like me without life. It was like, it was so weird. So weird. Yeah, it was surreal. But we'll have to, there's a solution out there somewhere. We've just got to figure it out. The people want their audiobooks, and the authors want to give it, to provide the audiobooks, for sure. So, do you have any other clean authors, whether in middle grade or other genres, that you would recommend to our listeners?
Oh, all right. Well, the first one that comes to me for adult romance, which is, something I like to read before I'm going to bed, so I'm not scared, would be Sarah Eden. She has a lot of romances out. Some are current, but most are historical. And she's one of those ones that does the entire book of character things. In fact, one of her novels is now being made into a movie, and
cool.
I auditioned for it. Did not get it. My British accent was okay, but it wasn't quite. The person who got it had a father from England, so I'm sure she had a lot better accent than I did.
Yeah.
But that would be, so Sarah Eden. Carol Lynch Williams comes to mind for middle grade and young adult. She does get a little bit dark, but not, not to the point where you couldn't call it clean.
Yeah.
My goodness, when you tell me, I could have a whole list if I had an afternoon to think about it.
Yeah,
Julie Wright and Jeanette Rollison. Julie Wright writes both children's and adult romance, and Jeanette Rollison does the same. Both, I think I've actually seen more of young adult with Jeanette Rollison, cool. But everything I've read of theirs has been clean.
Awesome. Thank you. We love building up this list for the people who are looking for them, and it's hard to find. And so we've got our authors on the show, and then the list of people and the recommendations, and then hopefully we can get them on the show as well. That would be a lot of fun.
Oh, and J. Scott Savage that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, we need to get back to that Two Truths and a Lie. Let's see if we
Okay.
can figure that out. So I'm going to pull it up here.
I don't think you snuck any
know.
questions in through me, did you?
No, we didn't. We were having too much fun. All right. So, number 1, I talked to Bob Hope on the phone. Number 2, I was at Cape Kennedy to watch Apollo 11. And number 3, I had a sheik kick me off an elevator. Okay, Brock.
All right. So, man, because we didn't get any questions, I don't have any basis for what my guess is going to be here, really. But I'm going to go with watching Apollo 11. I think maybe there's a little bit of basis. Obviously, you've been in acting, so maybe talking to Bob Hope is a possibility there. And I don't know what to think about the sheik, but I'm going to go with Apollo 11 as the lie. So
all right,
Marcus.
Well, again, this is just shot in the dark, so I'm going to go with something different. I'm going to go with the number 3. I had a sheik kick me off an elevator. So which one is the lie? Yeah.
The lie is Apollo 11.
Yeah. Sorry, Marcus. It's going to be rough. So,
and this was this was a guess. We have to acknowledge that you just guessed.
Being a good guesser, lucky is as good as being good, you know?
True.
But those are 2 great stories. Maybe really quickly, Susan, just share with us the talking to Bob Hope and getting kicked off an elevator.
My dad was an angel investor on some Broadway show, and Bob Hope was another one of the angel investors. So I happened to answer the phone when it was him. And, that's just been my claim to fame.
There you go.
And the sheik on the elevator, we were taking a trip to England, and we were in a hotel in London, and I was taking my brother around. We were just scoping out the hotel. We went up the elevator to the very top floor and opened it up, and there's a sheik with all his bodyguards around him. And he goes, so we got off and he got on.
Maybe you were not allowed to ride with him.
I guess I wasn't.
Nor are you going to argue with all those bodyguards.
No, indeed.
Nope.
All right. So 9 to 5.
9 to 5.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Susan. It's all right. Thank you for being on the show. We had a lot of fun. That was a great conversation, and we look forward to reading Misclassified and then your future books coming out. They sound like a lot of fun.
Thank you. I had fun too.
Awesome. So everyone out there, thank you so much for listening. Please share, tell your friends about the podcast, share online, subscribe, follow. This is the best way to help us grow the podcast so that we can get the word out about more clean authors and clean books out there and give you more choices. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time on the Clean Library Podcast.